This episode is brought to you by CarterComics.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your comic needs, whether it be graded or raw. Carter Comics has got it all. All you gotta do is go to CarterComics.com, fill your card up with all their amazing comics. Use the discount code FREAKNET, FREAKNET. Save you 10% at checkout. Not only on their website, but also at their eBay account. And the link to eBay can be found on their homepage at CarterComics.com. Again, CarterComics.com is your one-stop shop for all comic needs. Greetings, listeners, and welcome to another episode of this freaky show. I am your host, Travesty, and with me this evening,
the Freak Joe.
Episode 2 of this freaky show. I don't know why I was about to say this freaky tale. That's your thing, not mine. This episode of this freaky show, we're going to talk about serial killers and the characters that, I guess, were inspired by them. I guess, which is a weird way of saying that something inspired murderers, which is a wild thing.
All right.
Joe, how are you?
I'm all right.
Glad to hear.
Tired, ready for bed. We don't usually record this late.
I don't remember the last time we recorded a Sunday evening.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
How are
guys, you? I'm good. Same boat as you. A little bit tired. You know, the ambiance I'm trying to set here during these episodes makes me kind of want to nap. So we'll see what happens to me during Freaky Tales later on here in the show. If you guys haven't had a chance yet, make sure you go check out our Freaknet Studios YouTube channel, where our cemetery vlogs, Freaky Cemetery, are being currently released throughout the month of October. As the date of this release, should be 3 of them out there already. So the first 3 episodes should be there. And if you're watching this some point later in October than the release date, there'll be plenty more. There's going to be a total of 12, and they're kind of scattered throughout the month. So make sure you go check it out. So do that. We went through Michigan, so we're excited for it. So if you guys enjoy those, and subscribe over at YouTube while you're there, of course. So, okay, let's talk about serial killers. I know we talk. I think at least there's one episode a year where we discuss serial killers, but it's always in like different ways. I think we talk about obviously the most popular ones, the most famous ones, the most well-known ones, and what they did and all that stuff. What I originally wanted to do is kind of talk about actually, you know what? I think that's going to be a topic sometime this year. I gotta look at it. I don't really know. I make notes and I still don't know. Yeah, never mind. That's the next episode. So next episode, we're going to talk about lesser-known serial killers. This episode, we're talking about horror characters based on real people. So let's dive into that. So first one we're going to talk about is actually probably like the most interesting serial killer to me, anyways, is actually Ed Gein. And
nice.
Right, and it's weird to actually consider him a serial killer, because in retrospect, there's only been like 2 confirmed murders done by him. One was Bernice Worden, and the other one was Mary Hogan. But there is 7 other suspected murders done by him, but can never be confirmed, or they can never really link to him. That was Georgia Weckler, 8 years old, Evelyn Hartley, 15 years old, Victor Travis, 43 years old, James Walsh, 32, Irene Keating, 30, and Judy Rodenkow, 16 years old. Obviously, when he got caught, one of the biggest things they discovered in his house was pretty much it was a house of horrors. Different like things made out of human beings. I think there was like a belt made of human nipples. There were bowls that were made from like the tops of human skulls. I think there was a lampshade made of human skin.
That's the one you always hear about.
Yeah. Jars, I don't know, human body parts and stuff like that. I think collectively they found the parts of like 9 corpses, because he was also a grave robber of sorts, and not so much the robber of like jewelry and stuff like that, but actually of the corpses themselves. And I do believe, I think it was Bernice Worden. I can't. It was one of the two confirmed. I think it was Bernice Worden that he actually had, which I think they call dressing a deer. In that sense, hooked up upside down, slit down the middle, and like it was basically draining her body as you would when they would dress a deer, in a sense. He did go hunting a lot with his brother, and I believe there's rumor that his brother died, that he intentionally murdered his brother on a hunting trip. I believe that's Ed Gein. I believe his brother did die on a hunting trip, and they suspect that he did it on purpose. Also, I think there's something about like maybe his mother and him having to do something with her death as well. But outside of all that gruesomeness, he was known as the Butcher of Plainfield, and that's Plainfield, Wisconsin, not here in Illinois, or the Plainfield Ghoul. His house at one point did stand, I think, for a little bit afterwards, but eventually got torn down and destroyed. I think actually got torched. So I think the town took care of that on their own, whatever it was. So house is no longer there, which I don't see anyone wanting to buy that house to live in, maybe as like a museum kind of concept. But there are, from what I can understand, there are 5 different characters that have been inspired by Ed Gein. I think the most well-known one is Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lamb. Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also one.
Really?
Norman, yeah, apparently. I think mainly it's just probably maybe the skin mask. I think
that'd do it, I guess.
I think that as far as I can tell, that could be the only thing that really relates the two. I mean, because like I said, he's not he's not out there like murdering people. Because like I said, there's only 2 confirmed. The other 7 are suspected, and 9 more are corpses. So,
right.
Norman Bates from Psycho, also inspired by Ed Gein. Garland Green from Con Air, which I believe was Buscemi's character. And then Dr. Oliver Thredson, American Horror Story Asylum. And that's one I know nothing about because I've never seen any of the American Horror Stories because that's not my thing. So.
Yep, fair enough.
Next one we have here on our list is Danny Rowland. Real quick. So Ed Gein lived from 1906 to 1984, and the span of his murders were from 1947 to 1957. So over a span of 10 years is when these deaths and the grave robbing was occurring. Danny Rowland, he lived from 1954 until 2006. He was known as the Gainesville Ripper. His span was very short, 1989 to 1990. So he started when I was born and stopped when Joey was born. So there we go.
Nice.
Yeah, right. He had a total of 8 victims. They're known as the Shreveport Murders. So in November, the first set, I guess, is Shreveport Murders, November 4th of 1989. There was Tom Grisham, Julie Grisham, and Sean Grisham, 55, 24, and 8 years old, respectively. Then the Gainesville Murders happened on August 24th, 1990. There was Sonia Larson, 18, and Christina Powell, 17. The next day, there was Krista Hoyt, age 18. And then 2 days following that, in 1990, was Tracy Pauls, 23, and Manny Taboda, also 23 years old. Only one character I could tell inspired by Mr. Rollins here was Ghostface from Scream. So, I don't think it's so much because I kind of looking at this stuff, I don't think he called people up and was messing with them on the phone. I think it was more of the breaking into the homes and slashing them up and stuff. And no, I don't believe he also wore a Scream mask. I think they just used that. Kind of what's that one movie when a stranger calls or strangers, people were outside the house Like,
Oh yeah, Strangers, I think.
yeah, it's like I don't know the movie because again, I don't watch stuff like that. And to recap, if you guys watched the previous episode and you remember at the beginning of the episode, I told you guys that there was something I wanted to tell you at the end of the episode, and I really didn't get to it. What I was going to tell you was that I was going to make it an effort to watch a horror movie every single day throughout the month of October. Well, as we record, this is October 6th. I've watched 0. So maybe next year. Just want to be honest. Full. You know me. I hate horror movies. I just cannot do it. I think The Strangers, though, if I do remember the preview or the trailer for it, I think that's the episode or the movie where like they bound up the residents of the house and then they're asking why are you doing this, and they said because we have nothing else to do or because we're bored or some goofy thing like that. So that is Danny Rollins again, the Gainesville Ripper. So next one is Janine Jones. Her crimes were committed within the year 1950. Or no, I'm sorry, no. She was born in 1950, still alive, currently incarcerated today. Her crimes were spanned between 1970 to 1982. Only 2 have been possibly confirmed, but possibly over 60 have actually happened. And her victims were babies, infants, toddlers, stuff like that. As I can tell, there's only one character that she inspired, and that was Kathy Bates' character in Misery. Or I'm sorry, Kathy Bates in the movie Misery. Is that right? No, there was a Kathy Bates actor, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she played her in Misery.
So it's just the same name. No, that has to be right. No, that has to be right.
She played Annie Wilkes in Misery.
Okay, so Kathy Bates is the actor
the actress
who played. Okay, so I got my notes mixed up. So yeah, Kathy Bates isn't a serial killer. Her character in Misery is a serial killer. So okay, that makes way more sense. Another really famous serial killer, John Wayne Gacy. There was a podcast I listened to about this dude. I listened to a lot of serial killer podcasts, but this one was like a really unique one. Just because like him and Ted Bundy, like always stuck out in my mind when it came to like the Mount Rushmore of serial killers and the more well-known serial killers, because these were guys, actually BTK killers, same guy. They seem like normal people living normal lives. Like to see how Ed Gein lived, I think he was a little bit on the spectrum. I think he had some kind of mental disorders that when you saw him, he just seemed a little bit off. Jeffrey Dahmer, kind of a little bit off, quiet, just a little bit off. But John Wayne Gacy, I mean, I think he was like a chancellor, or he was part of like the community government, the town's government or something like that. He dressed up as a clown for sick kids at the hospital. He threw he threw parties for his friends and all this other stuff. I believe he was also a painter that he did kind of on the side. And I think we kind of talked about it. There's that documentary about Nickelodeon, and one of the Predators on there owned a painting painted by John Wayne Gacy. But by all accounts, John Wayne Gacy was just a normal dude, an everyday dude, a neighbor that kind of people like kind of admired in a way, because he was very involved in his community and he did a lot for children and stuff. So he was known as the Killer Clown. His crimes were committed between 1972 and 1978, as far as I could tell. He had 33 victims. 26 of them were buried in his crawl space. 4 of them were found in the Des Plaines River. One of them was hidden in his dining room, and the other one was in his garage.
Wow.
And if you're curious on who he inspired, Pennywise, obviously from It.
Mm-hmm.
So, weirdly enough, that's all of the ones I found. So I do is really short, but I tried looking around to see what any other characters like Jason Voorhees. Like I'm not quite sure what inspired Voorhees. Freddy Krueger, I want to say it was Rollins, but yeah, it wasn't a whole lot to really be found as far as serial killers and like who else inspired them. I mean, I know Geen was the one that like inspired most of them.
Gotcha. He wasn't even that prolific.
No, he just did a lot of messed up stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look here.
I should say he wasn't legally that prolific. I mean,
well,
I feel like we can all be pretty sure he killed more than 2 people.
Well, when next episode, when we talk about the more lesser known people, we're not going to talk about serial killers like Ed Gein, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, who I believe, in my opinion, are the 4 well-known, more often talked about than not serial killers.
Right.
It's odd to me that Ted Bundy isn't really found as like a I guess honestly is it American Psycho that who played Batman?
Which time?
Dark Knight. What's his name? Patrick
Christensen?
Yeah. Patrick Bateman was his character. Was that American Psycho?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I think that could be close to Ted Bundy. I mean, Ted Bundy was very OCD about his life. He kept himself very like well maintained, very well kept. He kind of yeah. Let's see if I could see. So let me look up a couple more because I do want to talk a little bit more about this. I didn't realize that my list was really that short. The Range was a movie that came out in 1974, was an almost forgotten horror movie that has gained recent popularity by playing on late-night television. The Canadian-American horror movie is based on the life of Ed Gein. So there's another one for Gein. Psycho, also Ed Gein. Silence of the Lamb, Ed Gein. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Ed Gein. And then, of course, there was a movie, Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, is actually by Henry Lee Lucas. So one that was brought up, and I kind of didn't talk about it because I'm not quite sure if it's relevant, was obviously Dracula, who is, inspired by Vlad the Impaler. Right. I just didn't know if that one was really relevant as far as serial killers and stuff like that. The Clove Hitch Killer. The Clove Hitch Killer asked what you would do if your dad were secretly a serial killer. The movie draws inspiration from the BTK killer, which was probably the dumbest as far as how he got caught in the history of fucking serial killers.
Oh, how did he get caught?
So he had a string of murders going on and everything, and then he stopped. He had a family, had a normal life. I think he was a postman or something like that, or like a peace officer. He had a normal job, normal life, and everything. And he put all his murdering and stuff behind him until like the anniversary of his murders came back around, like in the news, and they were talking about him. And he realized that the entire time, from the moment he stopped till the anniversary, nobody was ever talking about him. So he started back up again because he wants to be infamous and all this shit. And he sent, I don't know if it was like a tape he sent like a computer disc or something to like the police, like, tell them like it's like I won't be forgotten again, all this other shit, blah 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 blah. Come to find out, you're able to trace that shit and figure out where it's where like what computer or whatever the fuck it was that it was created from or whatever, and that's how they caught him, was because he sent them some kind of disk or whatever, and they're able to trace it back to like an IP address or rather, because when he was committing the murders, shit like that really didn't exist, and he wasn't really that smart of a guy to understand that shit. So yeah, he probably would have been better off sending them like a VHS, but he ended up sending them a computer disk. And,
oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
and in part because he asked the police if they could trace it, and they said, "Yeah, of course we can't."
Yeah.
Remember, kids, police are allowed to lie to you.
So yeah, I always wonder where that thing came from. It's like, if you're a cop, you have to tell me. It's like, I don't believe that. I mean, we talked about The Strangers when we mentioned Rawlins. Turns out the Manson family also inspired that movie. From Hell is loosely based on one of the most famous and intriguing serial killers in the world, Jack the Ripper, which is also another one that kind of came up, but as of right now, no one really knows who Jack the Ripper was, and was it just one person? Because I forget who it was, but they speculated that Jack the Ripper could have also been H.H. Holmes. I think that was a thing.
Interesting. H.H. Holmes?
I think it was H.H. Holmes.
I don't know who that is.
What? That's a lie, dude. H.H. Holmes. He was he's the guy who moved to Chicago and built like the murder house, the murder castle. During the World's Fair, he had people check into his hotel, and he had all these like shafts and shit that like he could like get into the rooms, and yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had never heard of him.
No, really? Oh yeah, dude. He's another one that, because it's Chicago history, I was really curious about a lot of like the shit that he did. I mean, like most of his career started out being like a scam artist, marrying people and shit for money and all that stuff. I think it's been years since I read about him. I think he was like an eye doctor or some kind of doctor. He owned a pharmacy, and he also bought a place to have a hotel. And this was all during the World's Fair in Chicago, and people would check into the house or into his place, and yeah, he'd murder them and shove them down chutes like Sweeney Todd almost.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could look at it as like Sweeney Todd, was maybe inspired by H.H. Holmes in some kind of way, but yeah, I think because obviously the house got torn down, the murder house but they found all these like trap doors and hidden passageways, and also I think somebody actually released or made like a 3D image of like how the murder castle looked, and with all the trap doors and passageways and all of that shit. But
wild.
Yeah. Also, what is
yeah, I could see him. I could see him as Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, my dog was just barking at something. That's horrifying. Okay, now we're good. So we could probably do an entire episode on H.H. Holmes if we really wanted to, but so the place got torn down, and I believe it's a post office now. I believe, and it's speculation that post office is haunted because all the victims that H.H. Holmes had. So,
wow.
Yeah. If we decide to do a 7th episode this month, maybe we'll do it about H.H. Holmes.
Sure. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a U.S. Post Service office now.
Yeah. I know little, not a lot about H.H. Holmes. So, guys, if you know any other serial killers that inspired any movie characters that I may have missed, and I'm sure I have. I'm sure there's more from like the Rob Zombie movies that came out, or maybe there is somebody who was like Jigsaw and Saw. So share with us, the ones I did miss. I do like hearing about that stuff. And Joe is going to do Freaky Tales here in a second, but we're going to kind of change up the format on how we're going to be doing these shows when it comes to the Freaky Tales. Once Joe ends his story, we are ending the show. So before I hand over the reins of the show to Joe, I want to remind you guys to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, just by searching This Freakin' Show. And, of course, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to listen to these shows particularly, just search This Freaky Show. They will show up. Or any other of our episodes, to search This Freakin' Show. And not only will these pop up, but also any other episode that we have done as well. And make sure you head over to YouTube, to our FreakNet Studios channel. There, you'll be able to check out our Freaky Cemetery vlogs of not only Michigan we did this year, but also all the previous ones from the past 3 years that we did it. So, with all that said, I am done, and I'm going to leave it up to Joe to share with you all our next freaky tale.
How He Left the Hotel by Louisa Baldwin. I used to work the passenger lift in the Empire Hotel, that big block of building in lines of red and white brick like streaky bacon that stands at the corner of street. I'd served my time in the Army and got my discharge with good conduct stripes, and how I got the job was in this way. The hotel was a big company affair with a managing committee of retired officers and such like gentlemen with a bit of money and concern, and nothing to do but fidget about it. And my late colonel was one of them. He was as good-tempered a man as ever stepped when his will wasn't crossed. And when I asked him for a job, "Mole," says he, "you're the very man to work the lift at our big hotel. Soldiers are civil and businesslike, and the public like 'em only second best to sailors. We've had to give our last man the sack, and you can take his place." I liked my work well enough and my pay, and kept my place a year. And I should have been there still if it hadn't been for a circumstance. But don't let me anticipate. Ours was a hydraulic lift, none of them rickety things swung up like a pole parrot's cage in a well staircase that I shouldn't care to trust my neck to. It ran as smooth as oil, a child might have worked it, and safe as standing on the ground. Instead of being stuck full of amusements like an omnibus, we'd mirrors in it, and the ladies would look at themselves and pat their hair and set their mouths when I was taking them downstairs dressed of an evening. It was a little sitting room, with a red velvet cushions to sit down on, and you'd nothing to do but get into it, and it'd float you up or float you down light as a bird. All the visitors used the lift one time or another, going up or coming down. Some of them was French, and they called the lift the ascenseur, and good enough for them in their language, no doubt. But why the Americans that can speak English when they choose and are always finding out ways of doing quicker than other folks should waste time and breath calling a lift an elevator, I can't make out. I was in charge of the lift from noon till midnight. By that time, the theater and dining out folks had come, and anyone returning late walked upstairs, for my day's work was done. One of the porters worked the lift till I come on duty in the morning, but before 12 there was nothing particular going on, and not much till after 2 o'clock. Then it was pretty hot work with visitors going up and down constant, and the electric bell ringing from one floor to another like a house on fire. Then came a quiet spell while dinner was on, and I'd sit down comfortable in the lift and read my paper. Only I mightn't smoke, but nobody else might neither. And as to ask furrin gentlemen to please not smoke in it, it was against the rule. I hadn't so often to tell English gentlemen, they're not like furriners that seem as if their cigars was glued to the lips. I always noticed faces as folks got into the lift, for I've sharp sight and a good memory, and none of the visitors needed to tell me twice where to take them. I knew them, and I knew their floor as well as they did themselves. It was in November that Colonel Saxby came to the Empire Hotel. I noticed him particularly because you could see at once that he was a soldier. He was a tall, thin man about 50, with a hawk nose, keen eyes, and a gray mustache, and walked stiff from a gunshot wound in the knee. But what I noticed most was the scar of a saber cut across the right side of the face. As I got into the lift to go to his room on the 4th floor, I thought what a difference there is among soldiers. Colonel Saxby put me in a mind of a telegraph post for height and thinness, and my old colonel was like a barrel in uniform, but a brave soldier and a gentleman all the same. Colonel Saxby's room was number 210, just opposite the glass door leading to the lift, and every time I stopped on the 4th floor, number 210 stared me in the face. The colonel used to go up in the lift every day regular, even though we never came down in it till, but I'm coming to that presently. Sometimes, when he was alone in the lift, he'd speak to me. He'd ask me in what regiment I'd served, and he'd say he knew the officers in it. But I can't say he was comfortable to talk to. There was something standoff about him, and he always seemed deep in his own thoughts. He never sat down in the lift. Whether it was empty or full, he stood bolt upright under the lamp, where the light fell on his pale face and scarred cheek. Excuse me. One day in February, I didn't take the colonel up in the lift, and as he was as regular as clockwork, I noticed it. But I supposed he'd gone away for a few days, and I thought no more about it. Whenever I stopped on the 4th floor, the door of 210 was shut, and as he often left it open, I made sure that the colonel was away. At the end of the week, I heard a chambermaid say that Colonel Saxby was ill, so, thinks I, that's why he hasn't been in the lift lately. It was a Tuesday night, and I'd had an uncomfortably busy time of it. It was one stream of traffic up and down, and so it went on the whole evening. It was on the strike of midnight, and I was about to put out the light in the lift, lock the door, and leave the key in the office for the man in the morning, when the electric bell rang out sharp. I looked at the dial, and I saw what I was wanted on the 4th floor. It struck 12 as I stepped into the lift. As I passed the 2nd and 3rd floors, I wondered who it was who had rung so late, and thought it must be a stranger that didn't know the rule of the house. When I stopped at the 4th floor and flung open the door of the lift, Colonel Saxby was there, wrapped in a military cloak. The door of his room was shut behind him, so I read the number on it. I thought he was ill in his bed, and ill enough he looked, but he had his hat on, and what could a man that had been in bed 10 days want with going out on a winter midnight? I didn't think he saw me, but when I'd set the lift in motion, I looked at him standing under the lamp, with the shadow of his hat hiding his eyes, and the light full on the lower part of his face that was deadly pale, the scar on his cheeks showing still paler. "Glad to see you better, sir," said I, but he said nothing, and I didn't like to look at him again. He stood like a statue with his cloak around him, and it was downright glad when I opened the door of the lift for him to step out into the hall. I saluted as he got out, and he went past me toward the front door. "The colonel wants to go out," I said to the porter who stood staring, and he opened the door, and Colonel Saxby walked out into the snow. "That's a queer go," he said. "It is," said I. "I don't like the colonel's looks, so he doesn't seem himself at all. He's ill enough to be in his bed, and there he is, gone out on a night like this. Anyhow, he's got a famous cloak to keep him warm. I say, supposing he's gone to a fancy ball and got that cloak on to hide his dress," said the porter, laughing uneasily, for we both felt queerer than we cared to say, and we spoke there. As we spoke, there came a loud ring at the doorbell. "No more passengers for me," I said, and I was really putting the light out this time when Joe opened the door, and 2 gentlemen entered that I knew at a glance were doctors. One was tall, the other was short and stout, and they both came to the lift. "Sorry, gentlemen, but it's against the rule for the lift to go up after midnight." "Nonsense," said the stout gentleman. "It's only just past 12 and a matter of life and death. Take us up at once to the 4th floor." And they were in the lift like a shot. So up we went, and when they opened the door, they walked straight to number 10. A nurse came out to meet them, and the doctor said, "No change for the worse, I hope?" And I heard a reply, "The patient died 5 minutes ago, sir." Though I had no business to speak, that was more than I could stand. I followed the doctors to the door and said, "There's some mistake here, gentlemen. I took the colonel down in the lift since the clock struck 12, and he went out." The stout doctor said sharply, "A case of mistaken identity. It was someone else you took for the colonel." "Begging your pardon, gentlemen, it was the colonel himself, and the night porter that opened the front door for him knew him as well as me. He was dressed for a night like this, with his military cloak wrapped around him." "Step in and see for yourself," said the nurse. I followed the doctor into the room, and there lay Colonel Saxby, looking just as I had seen him a few minutes before. There he lay, dead as his forefathers, and the great cloak spread over the bed to keep him warm, that would feel heat and cold no more. I never slept that night. I sat up with Joe, expecting every minute to hear the colonel ring the front doorbell. Next day, every time the bell for the lift rang sharp and sudden, the sweat broke out on me, and I shook again. I felt as bad as I did the first time I was in action. Me and Joe told the manager about it, and he said we'd been dreaming. "But," said he, "mind you don't talk about it, or the house will be empty in a week." The colonel's coffin was smuggled into the house the next night. Me and the manager and undertaker's men took it up in the lift, and it lay right across it, and not an inch to spare. They carried it into number 210, and while I waited for them to come out again, a queer feeling came over me. Then the door opened softly, and 4 men carried out the long coffin straight across the passage and set it down with its foot toward the door of the lift, and the manager looked round for me. "I can't do it, sir," I said. "I can't take the colonel down again. I took him down at midnight yesterday, and that was enough for me." "Push it in," said the manager, speaking short and sharp, as they ran the coffin into the lift without a sound. The manager got in last, and before he closed the door, he said, "Mole, you've worked this lift for the last time, it strikes me." And I had, for I would have stayed at the Empire, for I wouldn't have stayed on at the Empire Hotel after what had happened. Not if they doubled my wages, and me and the night porter left together. The end.